Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon. He is Glen West. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in our homes, both of us at the same time for the first time, Glenn, in probably 3 or 4 weeks. With the
Wow.
holidays, with the you traveling to Tampa, me going to San Antonio, it's been quite a while. But we get settled in, and LSU says, "Hey, we're not out of the Bo Davis sweepstakes quite yet." The Tigers name Bo Davis the defensive line coach. Glenn, this is a massive hire in both recruiting, in both development. What we can really talk about a ton of different things. Your immediate reaction to the coup, it kind of feels like Brian Kelly is starting to stack on this defensive coaching staff.
Yeah, my immediate reaction was Brian Kelly is not pulling any punches with his coaching staff hires this year. I mean, they are going absolute 100% top of the line candidates, top of the line guys. And it really follows the theme here of getting their number one guy. I mean, we've talked
Yeah.
about the string of number one five-star recruits LSU's gone on. But Blake Baker was their number one guy from the very beginning at defensive coordinator, and Bo Davis was certainly their number one target on the defensive line side of things. And LSU's 2 for 2 in terms of getting their big guys in here and on the defensive side of the ball. Just a really really great hire. Really, I mean, there were reports out there a couple weeks ago or even last week when LSU's first made this decision to move on from their staff that they were prioritizing the defensive line coach as much as the defensive coordinator job. And I think
Hmm.
it's probably in hindsight now because they understood the amount of work that's going to be needed to be done here in a very short order on this defensive line. They absolutely are going to have to hit the ground running now with Bo Davis, but you're bringing in one of the elite fundamental technical developmental culture developmental coaches in college football with this hire, a guy who's been around the block so many times. I mean, was a Pete Jenkins disciple, so everybody knows how highly regarded Pete Jenkins has been here at LSU. And Bo Davis was one of his early disciples in the coaching tree there. He spent some time, obviously, with Nick Saban, spent a lot of time with Nick Saban at LSU and then Miami Dolphins and then Alabama a couple times. So he's been around elite defenses. He's recruited at an elite level, produced a number of All-Americans and first-round picks over his career. And then the last few years at Texas, he's done an absolutely phenomenal job of building that group up and to where they were one of the more elite defensive line fronts in the country last year. So, and are bringing in a bunch of really stout players as well to their 2024
Hmm.
class. So, big time hire for LSU as they try to replenish this, this defensive line that I think you kind of look at it, defensive end and edge rusher certainly seems to be a little bit further ahead than maybe the interior D line. I think that's kind of where your initial focus is going to have to go if you're Bo Davis and Blake Baker and Brian Kelly about kind of building not only for this year but for the future as well. It does seem like the well is a little bit dry right now in terms of talent that you can bank on for the future. So you've got to try to do your best to get this thing fixed in very short order. And they're, I'm sure, already on the phone with a number of different guys to try to see if they can't maybe get a couple of them to stay and certainly look at the portal and see if that's an option here to maybe add a late addition to the program here before you start spring ball in a couple months. But yeah, just overarching thoughts here. This is an absolute home run hire, grand slam hire for LSU, and one that they needed. I think to kind of really feel comfortable about this future is going to go. And just kind of one last little note here. I think this is going to be the one that you hope sticks. Like, this is
Mm.
defensive line coaching staff has gone through so much, I don't want to call it turmoil, but it's kind of been
Upheaval,
turmoil.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the last several years. I mean, not even just this last year where you went from Jamar Kane to Gerald Chapman to Jimmy Lindsey to John Jancic to Pete Jenkins. But even before that, they really have not gone more than 2 years with the same defensive line coach for uh, going back to early 2010s when you had Haley
Yeah.
here. So like there's I think this is a guy though that you see his track record as a coach. LSU went after him hard at Texas the previous 2 years. He stayed loyal to Texas before now. He was at Alabama for 4 year stretch. He was certainly at LSU for a very long stretch early in his career as well. So like there's a lot of momentum here, I think, to where you can not only get him in the building, but also know that this is his alma mater and that this is a place he'll probably want to stick around for a little while and really build this thing up the right way. So I think that is probably an underrated component to all this that really makes a lot of sense for LSU.
This is a little breaking news on the pod. You ready for this?
Uh-oh. What we
Nick
got?
Saban just retired.
No way. Really?
Yes. Yes. And we're gonna
Oh
make
my
this a part of the
goodness.
pod because this obviously means that's wow.
Wow. Wow. That is a
ESPN and has reported Chris Lowe, ESPN senior writer, college football writer, Nick Saban has retired.
oh my God. Wow.
Wow. So,
Okay.
okay, that's awesome. I'm sure we're going to have great conversation. I thought it'd be appropriate because we talk about LSU, and it kind of goes in the second part here, Glenn. I mean, Nick Saban's gone from Alabama. That's breaking news here on the pod. Oh my gosh, wow. But the impact of hiring Bo Davis, look, Brian Kelly said when he got to Baton Rouge, he wanted to beat Nick Saban. He wanted to beat Alabama. And there has been no rest for the weary in building a staff that can compete with that. I don't know what's going to happen in Tuscaloosa, but we were kind of talking about this. You want to build an all-star staff, especially in the SEC. Glenn, the biggest impact here is you just poached Bo Davis away from a conference rival in Texas that's
Yeah.
entering with a lot of momentum coming off a college ball playoff appearance. And wow, still can't believe that I had like
I
five
can't.
people text me, and then I searched on Twitter as you were talking. I was like, holy cow. But we'll talk about
Wow.
this in the grand scheme of
Everyone's
LSU
talking about
building.
it.
In the grand scheme of LSU building their staff here, this is monumental as you could have a changing of the guard happening in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is stunning stuff. I mean, this is one of the all-time great coaches in organized team sports that has ever lived. Um, I really didn't see this one coming. I thought he might have another couple of years in him, but wow. I mean, like, now your head immediately goes to LSU. All right, well, they've been poaching guys left and right from A&M. They just got this Texas coach. They've got the Missouri defensive coordinator. What can they kind of go after from Alabama now? It just
Yeah,
does. It seems
it's
like your
wow.
mind travels in light year speed when something like this happens. But yeah, look, we should probably keep this on Bo Davis and talk about Nick Saban for
Yeah.
another day. But look, there's just so many reasons that this makes sense from an LSU perspective. Obviously, the family aspect of the Louisiana aspect here of having these ties, these recruiting ties. This is a guy who's recruited the South at a very high level for his entire career. So yeah, this is an extremely important day for LSU. It's going to get now masked over by the glossed over by the news here of Nick Saban retiring, but yeah, wow. I mean, like, this is talk about breaking news, but yeah, this is going to be a magnificent start if you're LSU, if you're Brian Kelly, to getting this thing, on the right track. And
Yeah.
this is where you kind of have to start. The secondary, of course, is going to be extremely important to get that locked in. Really looks like Corey Raymond's going to be a favorite for that job. We haven't really been able to talk about it too much yet, but that certainly seems to be trending in the right direction there. You add Bo Davis now. And the report from Football Scoop here is that Kevin Peoples is still very much in play for LSU on the defensive line side as well. Somebody that can come in and coach the defensive ends and the edge rushers, and also has a very good recruiting background. As recently as this year, when Missouri signed, Williams. I can't even say his this 5-star
Williams
defensive
Winery.
Williams Winery to their class as well. So, like, I mean, if
Yeah.
LSU's able to pull that one off, if they're able to bring Corey Raymond in here, now you're looking at a foundation here of guys who have not only had experience of developing talent at a very high level, but also recruiting at the highest level as well. And that's where I think Brian Kelly really, I think, noticed that LSU was going to be in a little bit more of a an immediate help there, because LSU's rarely had a talent problem in their history as a program over the last, I would say, 20 years. This year, you could definitely say that on the defensive side of the ball, they had a talent issue. There was not a lot of talent in the secondary, not a lot of talent on the defensive line that you could really count on a week in, week out basis. And now you're bringing these guys in to develop these players that you're hoping to get back into the program. There's a lot of potential here, but they just
Yeah.
never seem like they've got coached up the right way this last year. And now you're seeing a complete reversal here with all these resources pumped into the coaching staff side of things. But I mean, what are your thoughts on this and in the Bo Davis hire? I know you're probably scrolling through Twitter right now with the Saban stuff, but what are your thoughts
Well,
right now on just kind of where this kind of takes the program going forward?
I was actually, yeah, I mean, this news is absolutely insane, but actually kind of reading through, like, what Bo Davis has done. I mean, look, Tavondre Sweat was the Outland Trophy, player of the year, like the best interior defensive lineman for Texas. And, he has him, he has Byron Murphy. I mean, that's two guys that are going to hear their names called, whether it's days 1, 2, or 3. Here's the truth of the matter. Bakai Wingo is probably going to hear his name called. Mason Smith makes the jump. We'll see if he hears his name called and where that would be. This is a guy that has shown the ability to develop players and put them into the NFL at a consistent rate. So I think with any concerns that you have of this group going forward, look, Bo Davis, Glenn, I don't know if you, and we can't play it on the podcast because it is not safe for work and not safe for young ears if they're listening. But Bo Davis, if you haven't heard, go Google it or find it on Twitter somewhere. His speech to the defensive group after Texas lost to Iowa State 31-7 back in 2021. This is
Yeah.
a guy who he doesn't play games, and he is there to win a championship. He's been a part of a lot of championships. Obviously, you go back and look at LSU, and then in 03, I believe it was a part of that group. And then you kind of see where he was with Alabama. I know, and it kind of parlays into this, but it's just like this is a guy who's been around championships, and he understands what it takes. And me, you, and Sonny talked about this. Like, what was the likelihood that Davis would say, "Okay, I just came off a playoff appearance with Texas. We know the NIL packages that Texas can offer and throw out there. Like, it was going to be a hard sell to get him to come back, to LSU. Obviously, and I think multiple people have kind of reported this. His son, Bo, but Beau, is playing down at Southeastern Louisiana in Hammond. So there's that aspect of it. Would he be able to obviously, come over and have a roster spot? We'll see.
We'll see on
At
that one. Yeah.
LSU,
Yeah, we'll
I
see
don't
on
know,
that.
but I think being close to family
Oh,
is, I think,
absolutely.
going to matter to him too, and I think that was one of the biggest aspects. Then you come down to the financials. I mean, I know Wilson Alexander, who does a great job covering this team. He talked about it. I believe it's 1.25, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in that.
Yeah.
And going to continue
It
over the next
escalates. Yeah.
escalates over the life of the contract. I mean,
Mhm.
I'll tell you this from what I've seen over the past week, okay, which is we thought last week was crazy. Holy cow. Yeah, you hire Bo Davis. For me, Glenn, like this shows a sense of urgency in a new SEC that we have to be in that elite category. I would say this, and maybe you can offer some insight on this, but when I looked at the SEC, and if LSU fans take the purple and gold glasses off and look at the SEC, coming into next year, there's probably 3 teams in tier 1: Georgia, Alabama, and Texas, just with spending and current roster construction. LSU to me was in that tier 2, with teams that could make the jump. From Scott Woodward to Brian Kelly to the decision makers all around, to me, this is a full-on, full-court press to say, hey, we don't want to get left behind. We
Yeah.
don't want to be a team that draws back down to the middle of the pack. Rather, we want to be one of the leading candidates. I think hiring Bo Davis is not just a splash hire. This is a grand slam dunk. You use whatever sports, euphemism you want to use
Hole in
here.
one.
Hole in one. Yeah, we're almost, I mean, Masters are only 3 months away, 4 months away.
Hail
Yeah,
Mary.
let's use that one too. Hail Mary. This was a grand slam hire. And I like what you talked about too. When they sought after this and reports started coming up with different candidates, Blake Baker was number 1, like you said, and Bo Davis was number 1. Those two guys, like hitting on your A choices, your number 1 choices, that's a hard thing to do in this sport, to be
Not
able to do
settling for
that and,
second
and do
best.
it with 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know, man. I just really think that for fans that as we enter into a new era of college football that might worry, how serious is LSU going to be about, being at the top of the rung of the ladder here? Scott Wilbur just showed you, said, "Hey, we're going for it."
Yeah,
And I'll say, if I'm an LSU fan sitting at home, that makes me excited about what's to come.
yeah, they're pouring a ton of resources here into this staff, and I think that there was a recognition there from Brian Kelly, from Scott Woodward, from all the decision makers here, that something needed to change, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We're still waiting, obviously, to hear kind of what specific offensive changes could be on the way. I think we all kind of expect Joe Sloan and Cortez Hankton to both get
Mhm.
significant pay raises and promotions to coordinator jobs here at LSU. But with nothing's final until the ink dries, right? And certainly when you've got news like this Alabama thing, breaking at the way that it is, immediate questions are going to be who's the new staff over at Alabama, who's going to be coming over there,
Yeah.
who's going to be entering the portal from the Bama side of things once the spring gets here. There's going to be a lot of questions, I think, that come about here in the coming months. And look, this is a good next step. I mean, like this is a guy who I think, when you look at the numbers on the defensive line, they're thin right now, but I think
Mhm.
Davis is a guy that has a track history of getting the best out of his defensive lines and getting the best out of the talent that he has available to him. And, it might take a year. Like, I mean, the way that this thing is looking right now, that second portal window is going to be crucial for LSU to knock, some of these out of the park in terms of additions on the interior D line. But they absolutely could be in a position here where they don't really they see improvement and they see the kind of next step that you'd hope to get from having a staff like this, and certainly Davis, in the middle of it with the defensive line. But it might take a little while to get all the pieces on the tables for you to really feel like that this is a group that can compete at the highest of highest levels. And so
Mhm.
we'll see kind of what happens here over the next several weeks, months. Recruits are already reacting to this news. You saw Jakeem Stewart on social media, giving his, oh my God face to all this. And,
Yeah.
there's certainly a lot of signees and 2025 guys that are going to be paying close attention to how LSU finishes off this run with their coaching hires. But this was a big step here. And I think, I just kind of keep going back to the fact that, um, this was not only their eighth choice, but this is one of the more highly regarded defensive line coaches in the country, and I think sooner than later you'll start to see the effects of that and what it can play and mean for this defense going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I will say this, we talk about what's the immediate impact. I think long run impact, this is like what you said. This is the guy that you want to see that sticks. Sticks with LSU, becomes a force for LSU. And look, things happen when you have a high profile program. Maybe he one day he becomes a defensive coordinator or a head coach somewhere. And it's all because, he put in a really good 4, 5, 6 years and recruiting at an elite level. Hey, and maybe brought a championship back to Baton Rouge. But Bo Davis, in the interim, I will say, and right now in the immediate, I mean, Glenn, I think a lot of people are going to want to say, okay, we want to have the best defensive line group out there. There's, you wrote on a piece today the available options. Does Texas have any guys that enter? The news that just broke. I mean, Nick Saban retiring is going to have a trickle down effect everywhere across the country in terms of new staff movement. This is far from over, guys, and it's
Yeah,
going to be very
and the
interesting to see
fact,
what that looks like.
yeah, and look, the news of this retirement, I think was very well calculated. This is after the transfer portal window closed, the first portal window closed, so nobody from Alabama can enter. I don't believe right now. I mean, maybe there's a rule in there about the coaching staff that allows players to enter, but once that portal window opens in the spring, this is going to be very interesting to follow, just because they're
Hmm.
of who Alabama hires here in the next couple weeks, who what kind of happens there with that whole staff and how they look, leaving spring ball. This is bombshell news. I mean, I know we're
Yeah.
trying to stick with the Bo Davis thing here, but this Nick Saban angle to all of this really shifts the balance of power in the SEC. I mean, we expect that Alabama will go out there and hire a really good coach, but at the same time, this is also uncharted territory for them. They haven't had to make a decision like this in 15, 16 years. So,
Yeah.
they better know who they're going to go after. And I think that they probably have a good idea here, but this is a big day, I think, for college football, not only just for LSU in terms of what they were able to do today, but certainly when you're looking at the balance of powers next year in the SEC and what this decision by Nick Saban can have on that conference and on the outlook of next year.
Big news, not only for LSU, but as we're recording this pod, that are going to have a ripple effect. And I think, too, look, I mean, we talk about Nick Saban retiring. It does have a trickle effect because that's who everyone's been chasing for the past 10,
Yeah.
15 years as the model of the SEC. And I think when you look at what Brian Kelly and the full court press that Scott Woodward have put on to improve, and, our 24/7 Sports SEC columnist, Brad Crawford, had a great piece today about improving your staff after back-to-back 10-win seasons. It shows a push, an initiative to just be a higher profile program and really cash in on, what they think they can accomplish here at LSU. But man, stay tuned. We appreciate everyone tuning into the podcast, tuning in, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, or you're watching on YouTube. Over 4,000 subscribers, great numbers from a year over year that we're excited.
Yes, thank
to
you guys.
pushing out
Getting
content.
over that
That's
4,000 number was big, and
huge.
let's continue to build on it for sure.
Hey, and it's a great time. We still have that deal. 60% off annual VIP membership. Fantastic for you to take advantage of. Hey, you could talk Nick Saban retiring from the LSU perspective. You can talk, potential new names entering the portal, potential new names maybe visiting from the portal. We'll have more on that as well. And Glenn, I cannot wait. I got a little taste of someone commented on our Go 24/7 post about the transfer class for baseball and said, "Is it the sound of a bat hitting the ball one of the best things?" And it immediately took me back. I can't wait. I'm pumped.
Yeah.
This is great stuff. I can't wait for college baseball season, and we're almost.
It'll be
there.
great. We may or may not be having some content coming out too in the next couple days on a little sit down with the head man of LSU baseball before next week gets started with all the craziness of the preseason ball. But may or may not have some stuff coming here in the next couple days from that angle as well. So make sure you guys are signed up and subscribed and joining the community here. We've got a great thing building here, and we're hoping to continue growing it out as much as we can.
Awesome, and we can't appreciate it anymore. Like Glenn said, it's because of you. You all have enjoyed the content. We hope that you continue to do so on any platform that we're posting. Once again, YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, completely free for you to do that, or subscribe to the feed on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We will catch you next time. He's Glen West. My name's Bryce Koon, and this has been another episode, Bo Davis to LSU, here on the Go 24/7 podcast.